That gut feeling you've ignored for years? It was never irrational. It was never an overreaction. It was instinct, a survival mechanism honed through generations of human suffering and self-preservation. And yet, every time it tried to speak, you silenced it. What if every time you felt that strange discomfort around someone, the smile that didn't quite reach their eyes, the compliment that somehow felt like a trap, the way they knew just how to make you feel guilty, it wasn't paranoia, it was instinct, a survival mechanism built from millions of years of human evolution, whispering, "Get away." But you didn't, because society told you not to judge, because you were raised to give people the benefit of the doubt, because being nice was more important than being safe. Carl Jung saw what most people couldn't. The most dangerous people aren't the ones who look evil. They're the ones who look harmless. They smile, they flatter, they seem familiar. But beneath their surface lies a darkness, not chaotic, but calculated. A darkness they refuse to confront, so instead, they project it onto you. Not every threat announces itself. Some threats are soft-spoken, well-dressed, and full of praise. So ask yourself, how many times have you felt something was off but stayed anyway? How many times did you get burned because you didn't want to seem cold? This is where it starts getting personal, ready to get deeper, because the next one might explain why you keep trusting the wrong people without even realizing it. The truth is, it's not about judgment, it's about recognition. Today, we uncover the 5 types of people Jung quietly warned us about. The ones who wear masks of light but operate from shadow. People who drain your energy, manipulate your empathy, twist your reality, and call it love. You weren't overthinking, you were seeing clearly. And now you'll never unsee it. They like what you like. They believe what you believe. They finish your sentences, laugh at your jokes, validate your dreams. You think, finally someone who gets me. But something doesn't sit right. It's too smooth, too seamless. There are no edges to bump into, no disagreements to navigate. Every encounter feels like a performance, perfectly rehearsed. And the more you open up, the more they reflect it back, like a polished mirror showing you the version of yourself you most want to believe in. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we all wear to survive social life. But some people don't just wear a mask. They become the mask you want to see. Their entire identity is shaped around being agreeable, adaptable, and disarmingly charming. But here's the problem. There's no self underneath it. No substance. Just an empty shell molded by your light. At first it feels good. You feel seen, heard, admired. Their admiration becomes addictive. You start to rely on their validation like oxygen. You feel powerful, like you finally have someone in your corner. But slowly you begin to notice. They never truly share anything about themselves. Their beliefs change depending on who they're with. Their personality bends like water, taking the shape of every container. This isn't empathy, it's mimicry. According to Jung, these individuals haven't confronted their own unconscious. They haven't integrated their shadow. So instead of becoming whole, they build fragile identities by latching onto others. And once they've absorbed enough of you, they disappear, ghosted, betrayal, sudden withdrawal. No warning, because the moment you ask for authenticity, the illusion crumbles. And you're left with a cold truth. They never loved you. They loved what they could be by standing next to you. This kind of person is especially dangerous because they don't break your boundaries. They dissolve them. You forget who you are. You start questioning your instincts. You begin to wonder if you were the one who became too attached, too fast. But in reality, they designed the connection to feel that way. Not to bond, but to feed. The person who flatters you too quickly, agrees too much, adapts too easily, is not safe because they're not real. They're a mask built from your deepest desires, and that's what makes them so dangerous. Jung warned that when you don't know who you are, you become vulnerable to those who pretend they do. So the next time someone seems too perfect, pause. Ask, what's behind the reflection? Because not every mirror reveals the truth. Some are designed to blind you. They don't ask for much, just your time, your energy, your peace of mind. And at first it feels good to give. You're a good person, you help people, you care, but slowly helping starts to feel like drowning. You begin every conversation trying to lift them up, but end everyone feeling lower than before. Their stories are heavy, their pain is constant, their problems never get solved, and the worst part is, they don't want them solved. Carl Jung believed that all of us possess a limited supply of psychic energy, the mental, emotional, and spiritual fuel we use to live, create, connect, and grow. And while healthy relationships exchange energy in a mutual flow, some people take, constantly, quietly, without giving anything in return. They are the emotional leeches, or what modern psychology sometimes calls emotional vampires. They feed on attention, sympathy, and care, not to heal but to maintain control. Because as long as they are the victim and you are the rescuer, they don't have to take responsibility. You do. It starts subtly. They overshare a little too early. They always seem to be going through something. Every bad event in their life is someone else's fault. They need to vent, need a ride, need your time, just this once, until just this once becomes your entire emotional budget. And what keeps you stuck isn't fear, it's guilt. You tell yourself they're just struggling. You convince yourself you can handle it. You rationalize that they've been there for you too, sort of. But deep down, a different truth starts to echo. You're not helping them heal. You're helping them avoid responsibility. Jung warned that when people refuse to become conscious of their own shadow, their anger, selfishness, entitlement, they unconsciously seek out others to carry it for them. People like you, people with open hearts and weak boundaries, people who confuse love with sacrifice. But there's nothing noble about being drained. There's nothing spiritual about letting yourself be consumed. In fact, Jung believed that setting boundaries was not selfish. It was essential. Because every time you overextend for someone who refuses to grow, you rob yourself of the energy needed to become who you are meant to be. The emotional leech doesn't want your advice. They want your attention. They don't want solutions. They want sympathy. Because sympathy is power and guilt is their leash. So if you feel tired around someone, pay attention. If their presence leaves you feeling smaller, dimmer, less alive, that's not love. That's a slow extraction of your life force disguised as care. And when someone constantly makes you feel needed, ask yourself, is this a connection or a cage built from your own compassion? Some people will hate you for things you didn't do. They'll accuse you of intentions you never had. They'll twist your words, question your motives, and cast suspicion on your very presence. Not because of who you are, but because of what they refuse to see in themselves. Carl Jung called this psychological phenomenon projection. It's what happens when a person cannot face their own darkness, so they unload it onto someone else. They call you selfish because they're secretly driven by their own unmet needs. They call you manipulative because they use others in subtle, unspoken ways. They call you toxic because they can't stand their own unresolved pain. And the more unaware they are, the more confident they sound. That's what makes projection so convincing. It feels like the truth to them. The mind distorts reality to protect itself from internal collapse. So instead of acknowledging the jealousy, rage, or fear inside, they look outward and find someone to blame. Someone who's convenient, someone who's close, someone who reflects a trait they cannot admit exists in them, someone like you. Projection is a form of psychological warfare. It confuses the target and creates moral chaos. You begin questioning yourself. Am I really the problem? Was I too harsh? Was I being manipulative without realizing it? And this is exactly how it spreads. The projector transfers their shame onto you. You absorb it. You try to fix it. You walk on eggshells. But no matter how gentle, how apologetic, how accommodating you are, it's never enough. Because it was never about fairness or truth. It was about escape. According to Jung, every human being carries a shadow, the part of us we repress, deny, or ignore. It holds all the traits we've been taught to hate: selfishness, greed, anger, lust, arrogance. When integrated, the shadow becomes a source of strength. but when ignored, it becomes a weapon. And that weapon is often pointed at the people we care about most. The shadow projector lives in denial. They are trapped in a false sense of purity, and anyone who threatens that illusion becomes the enemy. You've probably seen this dynamic in families, workplaces, relationships. One person explodes in judgment while claiming the moral high ground. They play victim while throwing stones. They stir drama while preaching peace. It's not you. It's the reflection of something they can't process. And here's the brutal truth Jung left us with. The less a person is aware of their own inner darkness, the more power that darkness has over their life, and the more danger it poses to yours. So if someone constantly makes you feel guilty for just being yourself, step back. You're dealing with their shadow, and it thinks you are the threat. They make you feel seen, understood, special. Their presence is magnetic. Their words, so precise, so thoughtful, feel like they were designed just for you. You walk away thinking, finally, someone who gets it. But that feeling doesn't last, because later, when you try to recall what they actually said, there's nothing solid to hold on to. It's all surface, smooth, calculated, a performance. Carl Jung warned us about this kind of person, the one who knows how to say exactly what you want to hear, not because they care, but because they've learned how to disarm others with precision. He called this the trickster archetype, a figure who moves between light and shadow, truth and lie, intimacy and illusion. The trickster isn't always malicious, but they are always slippery. They adapt, they charm, they blend into the shape of your desires. They use emotional intelligence not to build connection, but to control perception. This is the masked manipulator. They're the influential boss who gives you praise in public, only to undermine you in private. The lover who overwhelms you with affection early on, only to withdraw when you ask for consistency. The friend who always seems generous, but makes sure you always owe them something in return. Jung believed that the more unconscious a person is of their shadow self, the more likely they are to project a carefully curated identity, a persona. And the more convincing the persona, the more dangerous it becomes. Because the people who hide behind masks aren't just lying to others, they're lying to themselves. And that makes them unpredictable. You want to believe in them because they say all the right things. They seem kind, composed, wise. But underneath the charm is often a deep void, a hollow place where true self-awareness should live. And that void demands to be filled through admiration, obedience, or emotional dependence. The masked manipulator doesn't demand control. They earn it. They don't steal trust. They're given it, willingly. And that's what makes their betrayal so devastating, because you never saw it coming. You were too focused on their charisma, their composure, their story. You projected your hope onto them, and in doing so, you became their audience. This is why Jung warned us. Never mistake charm for character. Never assume that emotional fluency equals emotional integrity. The ones who make you feel the safest may simply be the ones who studied your defenses the longest. They know how to enter your mind. They know how to mirror your language. They know how to plant suggestions, doubts, and dependencies so gently you barely notice them. Until one day, you wake up and realize you've been moved like a piece on their chessboard. And by then, they're already 10 steps ahead, on to their next performance, their next audience. So ask yourself, are you trusting the person in front of you or the mask they wear to survive? They never raise their voice. They never make mistakes. They always say the right thing. Their life is a gallery of perfect choices, righteous stands, and public virtue. They carry the glow of someone who has it all figured out. Ethics, values, principles, truth. You almost envy them until you disagree, because the moment you challenge their opinion, even gently, something shifts. Their kindness turns cold. Their warmth vanishes behind a rigid wall of disappointment. You feel shamed, silenced, maybe even punished. But it's not open aggression. It's wrapped in a calm smile and a quiet judgment. They'll say they're just trying to help, but it doesn't feel like help. It feels like being slowly erased. Carl Jung warned us, the person who appears too virtuous, too flawless, too morally superior, often carries the most repressed darkness of all. Why? Because morality, when it becomes armor, isn't about truth. It's about control. This is the morally superior saint, the one who uses righteousness as a weapon, who builds an identity around being the good one, the wise friend, the perfect partner, the spiritual leader, the ethical voice in the room. And because they seem so pure, we rarely question their authority. In fact, we seek their approval. We want to be on their good side. We fear becoming the next target of their disappointment. But Jung saw this pattern as a red flag. He believed that extreme virtue is often a reaction to disowned shadow. People who cannot face their own inner chaos tend to overcompensate, constructing a persona of exaggerated morality. They present themselves as beyond fault because admitting otherwise would collapse the fragile illusion they depend on. And if you disrupt that illusion, even by accident, you become the problem. You'll notice these individuals often operate with subtle manipulation. They won't scream or argue. Instead, they'll use guilt as leverage. They'll frame disagreement as betrayal. They'll claim moral injury when you express boundaries. And over time, you'll start to doubt your own sense of right and wrong. Not because you're wrong, but because they've positioned themselves as the sole authority on what's right. It's exhausting because it's a trap built not from violence but from virtue, not from chaos but from control disguised as wisdom. And in many ways, this makes them the most dangerous of all, because they don't look like manipulators. They look like role models, leaders, heroes. They've built a reputation on being the one who always chooses the higher path, but that path is often paved with denial. Jung said, "Beware the man who casts out his darkness, he will become its servant." The one who refuses to admit fault, who never apologizes, who can't laugh at themselves, who speaks only in moral absolutes, is not safe. Because real integrity isn't loud, it isn't performative. It allows space for error, for humility, for shadow. So the next time someone makes you feel small in the name of goodness, pause. They may not be elevating you. They may be suppressing what they cannot face in themselves. You've probably asked yourself more than once, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep attracting the same kind of people? The ones who manipulate, drain, project, control. Why do I feel stuck in the same cycle, replaying the same emotional betrayals in different disguises? The answer isn't weakness, it's openness. Carl Jung believed that people aren't drawn together by accident. Relationships, especially painful ones, are mirrors. And sometimes what we call bad luck in people is actually our psyche trying to show us something we haven't yet faced within ourselves. If you're an empath, an idealist, a dreamer, you carry a deep longing, a yearning to understand, to fix, to redeem. You don't just want connection, you want wholeness. Jung called this the anima-animus dynamic, the inner search for your missing part, and it's beautiful until it blinds you. That desire to merge, to save, to feel complete, it makes you vulnerable to people who promise healing but only deliver harm. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You didn't just meet them, you were drawn to them. Not because you wanted pain, but because part of you believed pain was the price of intimacy, that you had to earn love through sacrifice, that your worth would finally be proven by healing someone broken. And so, unconsciously, you let them in. You ignored red flags. You excused patterns. You called manipulation misunderstanding. You called guilt caring. But you weren't weak. You were just unguarded, wide open in a world full of people who feed on that kind of vulnerability. Now you know better. The people you attract reflect the parts of you that still crave something outside yourself: completion, validation, rescue. But when you begin to meet your own needs, when you stop outsourcing your wholeness, those same people start to lose their power, because they can only control the parts of you that are still unsure. So ask yourself, not why did they do this to me? Ask, what in me invited them in? And more importantly, what in me is finally ready to stop? It's easy to make this about them. The manipulators, the emotional leeches, the shadow projectors, the masked actors, the saints with secret thorns. But that's not where Jung wanted us to stop. His work wasn't a warning to fear others. It was a call to see ourselves more clearly. Because every person you meet, especially the difficult ones, acts as a mirror. They don't just reveal their nature, they reflect your patterns, your blind spots, your unresolved wounds. They reveal the parts of you that still seek love in the wrong places, that confuse validation for connection, that mistake charm for character, that fear solitude more than toxicity. Jung believed that transformation begins not with avoidance, but with awareness. True safety isn't about building walls. It's about recognizing who you are when no one is watching. Because once you integrate your own shadow, no one else's shadow can control you. You stop trying to fix broken people to feel whole. You stop silencing your intuition to keep the peace. You stop believing you deserve less just because someone else seems like more. The 5 types of people you should never trust. They're real, but they're only powerful if you let them in without knowing who you are. So the real work isn't out there, it's in here. Your boundaries are no longer lines of defense, they're declarations of self-respect. Your awareness becomes your shield, and your inner work becomes the filter through which all relationships pass. Because maybe the goal was never to avoid danger completely, maybe the goal was to stop inviting it in. And that starts not by fearing the darkness, but by finally meeting your own. If this made you see someone or yourself differently, don't keep it to yourself. Share this with someone who needs the wake-up call, like if it hit a nerve, and subscribe, because the next truth we uncover might just save you from repeating the same story again.